In the busy city of Accra, Alma dressed up for what she thought would be a peaceful dinner with her boyfriend Kojo and his sister Mabel. The restaurant was glowing with golden lights, and the sound of soft music filled the air. Alma smiled, hoping for a nice family evening full of laughter and stories. But when the waiter placed the bill on the table, everything changed. Mabel's smile faded, and her eyes turned cold. With a slow, proud move, she slid the $300 bill toward Alma and said sharply, "You're dating my brother, so you should pay." The table went quiet. Kojo looked down, saying nothing. Alma's heart pounded. Her face burned with embarrassment, but she stayed calm. She gave a small, polite smile, pretending not to care, and reached for her purse. Deep inside, she was hurt but refused to show it. She had no idea that this single moment would start a chain of events that would change everything for all of them. What was supposed to be an ordinary dinner would soon become the beginning of a story people across the city would whisper about, a story of pride, revenge, and unexpected power. The moment Alma gently pushed the bill back and said she wouldn't pay for what she didn't order, Mabel's face changed. Her sweet fake smile disappeared, replaced by anger that filled the whole room like fire. She leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms, and laughed loudly, drawing attention from nearby tables. "So you think you're too good to pay?" she said, her voice rising with each word. Alma stayed calm. She simply shook her head and replied softly, "No, Mabel. I just believe everyone should pay for what they had." That small sentence hit Mabel harder than anyone expected. With a sudden dramatic move, Mabel pushed her chair back and stood up so fast it made plates rattle. All eyes turned to their table. "You low-class gold digger," she screamed, pointing at Alma like she was some kind of criminal. People gasped. Phones came out. Someone whispered, "Is she serious?" Kojo sat frozen, his hands on the table, his mouth half open, too scared or too weak to say anything. Alma didn't flinch. She sat still, her hands folded neatly on her lap, refusing to lower herself to Mabel's level. Then it happened. Before anyone could even process the moment, Mabel lifted her hand and slapped Alma across the face. The sound echoed through the restaurant like a loud crack. Gasps spread like wildfire. Glasses shook. A woman nearby covered her mouth in shock. Alma's cheek burned, but she didn't let a single tear fall. She stared at Mabel with calm eyes that only made Mabel angrier. Kojo's face turned pale. Shame, fear, and regret mixed in his eyes, but still, he said nothing. It was like he had vanished from the moment, leaving Alma to face it alone. People began recording. A waiter rushed forward but didn't know what to do. The whole restaurant froze, watching a private fight turn into a public scene. Alma slowly reached into her purse, not for revenge, not to argue, but to end it with quiet strength. She pulled out a $100 bill, placed it gently on the table, and stood up. She didn't shout. She didn't defend herself. She didn't look back. Her silence was louder than anything Mabel had screamed. It was the kind of silence that makes people stop and remember. As she walked out of the restaurant, people whispered her name. Some looked at her with pity. Others looked at her with respect. Mabel was left standing there, breathing heavily, realizing she had just embarrassed herself in front of everyone. Kojo sat like a statue, watching the woman he loved walk away without a word. He didn't know it yet, but that slap would change everything, for Mabel, for him, and for Alma. It wasn't just a slap. It was the spark that lit a fire no one could stop. Alma stepped out of the restaurant into the cool night air, her heart pounding in her chest. The streets of Accra glowed with the soft orange light of passing cars and street lamps. She walked slowly, her heels clicking against the pavement, her reflection flashing in every glass window she passed. Her cheek still stung from Mabel's slap, but what burned more was the silence from Kojo, the man who was supposed to protect her, who sat there and watched her be humiliated. Her eyes filled with tears, but she wiped them away quickly. She wasn't going to cry for people who didn't deserve her pain. She had learned long ago that silence can be louder than screams, and power doesn't need to announce itself. She took a deep breath, pulled out her phone, and scrolled to a contact saved under a single letter, K. Her hand didn't shake, her voice didn't rise. She simply said one word, calm and clear, proceed. Then she ended the call. That one word was enough. The city around her kept moving, but something deep beneath the surface had just begun to shift. Alma wasn't some random woman trying to impress a rich boyfriend. She was the quiet force behind one of the biggest rival companies to Kojo's firm, the one he always complained about, the one he wished would collapse. For years, she had stayed in the shadows, happy to let others take the spotlight while she built her empire in silence. No one knew she owned more than half the shares in that company. Not Kojo, not Mabel. To them, she was just a pretty face with a calm smile and simple clothes. But that night, the woman they thought they could insult had just become their biggest problem. As she walked down the street, the cool wind brushed her face, drying the last of her tears. Her steps grew stronger, faster, filled with purpose. Every echo of her heels felt like a drumbeat of power. She wasn't planning revenge out of anger, she was taking back her dignity, her peace, and her power. What Mabel saw as a small insult was about to bring down everything she and Kojo had built on pride and arrogance. Alma stopped by her car, opened the door, and looked back once at the glowing restaurant sign. Through the glass windows, she could still see people whispering, probably retelling the story of the slap. Let them talk, she thought. Soon, they would be talking about something else, something much bigger. She smiled faintly, got into her car, and drove away, leaving behind the noise, the humiliation, and the people who underestimated her. The slap didn't destroy her. It woke her up. And from that moment on, nothing and no one would ever make her feel small again. By sunrise the city woke to a storm. Kojo's phone buzzed and buzzed until it went quiet from too many missed calls. He opened his laptop and found emails piling up like a wall. Long-time clients sent short messages that said only one thing, "We are suspending services," and contracts that had kept his business alive were suddenly gone. The supplier who always delivered goods on Monday called to say their account was frozen and they could not ship until payment was cleared. Bank notices sat in his inbox. Lawyers left voicemails. Employees sent worried texts asking if payroll would run. At Mabel's boutique the tills would not scan and the payment terminals showed errors. The landlord had received new paperwork and would not let staff in until ownership questions were cleared. Gossip moved faster than traffic. Someone online posted the restaurant video with a caption that demanded to know who the woman was. Within hours the clip had been shared and reshared, and the story turned from a single slap to a web of business fallout. People began to whisper about a shadow buyer, a silent investor who had quietly been buying up key properties and supplier accounts connected to Kojo's company. Reporters called the office. Partners asked for meetings. Sponsors who once sent checks stopped responding. Mabel tried to post a short apology video but the comments burned hotter than any reply she could type. Kojo drove to the office with his chest tight and his mouth dry. He burst through the door ready to blame others and demand answers, but the scene that met him felt like a cold wave. There, in his leather chair, calm as dawn, sat Alma. She lifted a white cup to her lips as if she belonged there. Papers were neatly stacked in front of her. She had a small smile that did not need to be loud. Kojo stared, stunned, as the gravity of the morning hit him all at once. He saw the missed calls on his phone, the emails open on a screen, the supplier texts asking for clarification. He understood then that this was not random trouble. It was a targeted cut to the roots. Alma set down her cup and did not shout. She said only what she needed to say in a voice soft enough to make the room go still. "You should have paid the bill," she told him, and there was no mockery in her tone. "Now you will pay the price." His name turned to ash in his mouth. He fumbled for explanations, for apologies, but she had already moved past them. Her calm had become the engine that had started the morning collapse. As staff gathered and whispers swelled into questions, emails from legal teams pinged into inboxes, and a noticeably quiet panic replaced the usual hum of the office. Outside, the city read the same headlines, and the woman who had walked out of a restaurant the night before was now the reason Kojo could not make a single call go through without someone asking why. Mabel didn't sleep that night. Her phone kept buzzing non-stop, and every time she checked, it was another message, another notification, another comment tagging her name. At first, she didn't understand why people were talking about her, but then she saw it, the video. Someone from the restaurant had leaked the CCTV footage. It showed everything, from her shouting to the moment her hand hit Amma's face. The clip spread like wildfire across Africa. Within hours, it was everywhere, on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and news blogs. The title under the video was harsh and clear, entitled "Woman Slaps Boyfriend's Girlfriend Over a Bill." At first, Mabel tried to laugh it off, pretending it didn't bother her. She told herself it would die down in a day or two. But the internet had already decided. Memes were made, hashtags trended, and strangers filled her comments section with anger and disgust. Influencers called her a bully. People started boycotting her boutique. Customers returned orders, and sponsors who once begged to work with her suddenly went silent. One by one, brands emailed her to say they were cutting ties. Even her friends stopped answering her calls, afraid of being dragged into her scandal. Desperate, Mabel tried to fix it. She sat in front of her camera, pretending to cry, and posted a video saying she was sorry. She blamed stress, said she wasn't herself, said she had been misunderstood. But people saw through her act. The comments were brutal. "You weren't stressed when you slapped her," one said. "Now you're sorry because you lost your money," another wrote. Every apology she posted only made things worse. Mabel started to feel the walls close in. Reporters camped outside her boutique, asking if she wanted to explain her side. Old business partners pulled out of deals. Her reputation, something she had built for years, was gone in days. She tried to open a new store under a different name, but Amma's influence followed her everywhere. Mabel didn't know how, but every time she tried to rebuild, something fell apart. Licenses got delayed. Loans were denied. Suppliers refused to work with her. It was as if a quiet, unseen hand was closing every door in her face. At night, she couldn't escape the sound of her own slap echoing in her head. She replayed that dinner again and again, remembering Amma's calm face, the way she didn't fight back, the way she just walked out. It haunted her. Mabel had thought that night would embarrass Amma, but it had destroyed her instead. The woman she once called low class had turned out to be far above her in every way, richer, smarter, stronger. Now, Mabel was living in the shadow of her own mistake, while Amma's silent revenge followed her like a reflection she couldn't escape. Kojo had never felt fear like this before. Every morning brought new bad news, another contract lost, another investor pulling out, another message from the bank. His empire, which once looked untouchable, was falling apart piece by piece. He barely slept. His phone never stopped ringing, but no one was calling to help. They all wanted explanations, answers he didn't have. Even Mabel, once loud and proud, was silent now, hiding from the same people who once begged to be around them. Kojo finally broke and decided to call Amma. He rehearsed what to say, trying to sound calm, maybe even remorseful. When she answered, her voice was soft, almost too calm. "You've proven your point, Amma," he said quickly. "I've lost everything. Let's just talk." There was a long silence on the other end, and for a moment, he thought she had hung up. Then she said gently, "Kojo, you didn't lose everything. You threw it away." And before he could say another word, she ended the call. He tried texting her, sending long messages about how he regretted what happened, blaming Mabel, calling it a misunderstanding. But Amma didn't reply. She didn't need to. She already had everything she needed, including a secret Kojo didn't know she had discovered. During the chaos, Alma's team had gone through some of his company's documents. What they found was shocking. Kojo had secretly used her name and financial details to apply for a massive business loan months ago, without her permission. It was illegal, and worse, it showed just how deep his betrayal went. Alma didn't confront him. She didn't scream or threaten. She simply gathered the evidence, printed it, and sent it quietly to the authorities. She didn't even sign the letter. By the time Kojo realized what was happening, it was too late. One morning, 2 officers came to his office with papers in hand. His employees watched in stunned silence as their once confident boss was questioned about fraud and identity theft. He tried to talk his way out, claiming it was a mistake, but the evidence was too clear. The forged documents had his handwriting, his digital signature, and even his company stamp. Within a week, his accounts were frozen. The board voted to remove him. His partners cut him off completely. The same people who once praised his leadership now whispered about his downfall. Reporters called it the fall of a business prince. Kojo's reputation shattered in front of the whole country. Meanwhile, Alma didn't celebrate. She didn't post anything online or tell her side of the story. She simply continued her work, calm and composed, while the man who once watched her be humiliated now watched his own empire burn to ashes. Her revenge wasn't loud, it was quiet, calculated, and complete. And Kojo finally understood what true power looked like. Weeks passed, and the chaos had quieted down, though the memories still burned for those who caused it. The once proud Mabel had vanished from social media. Her boutique had shut down, her friends had drifted away, and her reputation had become a warning to others. Bills piled up, rent was due, and no one wanted to hire her. The same woman who used to walk into luxury stores with a camera and confidence now walked from door to door, looking for work. Life had turned full circle. One evening, she finally found a job, at a restaurant. Not just any restaurant, but the same high-end place where everything had started. She wore a plain black uniform, her nails unpolished, her hair tied neatly under a cap. The first few days were torture. She avoided looking at customers for too long, afraid someone might recognize her from the viral video. Every time she passed the corner table, the memory of that slap replayed in her mind like a cruel echo. That night, as she carried a tray of drinks across the room, she heard the hostess greet a new guest. When she looked up, her heart stopped. It was Alma. Elegant as ever, dressed in a simple white dress that somehow looked more expensive than anything Mabel had ever owned. Alma walked in gracefully, smiling politely at the staff, her presence commanding quiet respect without even trying. Everyone seemed to notice her, even if they didn't know who she was. Mabel froze where she stood. Her hands shook, and the glasses on her tray clinked softly. Alma's eyes met hers, calm and knowing, with the same quiet strength she had shown that night. There was no anger there, no pride, just a deep, peaceful confidence that made Mabel's chest tighten. For a moment, she wanted to run, to hide in the kitchen and pretend she hadn't seen her. But Alma gave a small, kind smile, not cruel, not mocking, and Mabel felt her knees weaken. Alma sat at the same table where the slap had happened. She ordered a simple meal and ate slowly, as if reclaiming the space that had once been her humiliation. When she finished, she called for the bill. Mabel, still trembling, brought it over. Alma looked at her with calm eyes and said softly, "This time, I paid your bill." She placed a crisp $300 tip on the table, the exact amount from that night, and stood up. The entire restaurant went silent. Staff stopped moving, and even the music seemed to fade. Mabel's eyes filled with tears that rolled down her cheeks before she could stop them. Alma didn't wait for a thank you or an apology. She simply smiled, turned around, and walked out, leaving behind the sound of quiet dignity that no slap could ever erase. Mabel stood there, shaking, her heart heavy with regret, finally understanding that power never needs to shout, it just shows up. As Alma stepped out of the restaurant that night, the cool air touched her face like freedom. Cameras flashed instantly. Reporters who had been waiting for weeks to catch a glimpse of her rushed forward, microphones stretched out. Everyone wanted a statement, a reaction, something dramatic. But Alma didn't give them what they expected. She stopped, looked straight at the cameras, and spoke in a calm, steady voice that cut through the noise. "Respect costs nothing," she said softly, "but some people pay a lifetime learning that." Then she smiled, got into her car, and drove away. The short clip of her words went viral within hours. It played on TV, flooded social media, and was quoted in newspapers across Africa. People called her the Queen of Calm Revenge. Women saw her as a symbol of dignity and strength. Alma never bragged, never explained her side, but everyone knew the truth. Her silence had spoken louder than any argument ever could. A week later, another story broke. It turned out Alma had quietly donated a huge amount of money to several domestic abuse and women's empowerment charities, all under Mabel's name. When the news spread, people were stunned. Some called it the ultimate act of grace, others called it poetic justice. Mabel, who had once slapped Alma in public, now had her name attached to kindness and charity, something she hadn't chosen, but could never escape. Alma's story became a legend, not about revenge through anger, but revenge through power, patience, and peace. The woman once humiliated in front of a crowd had turned her pain into purpose. And in the end, everyone learned that sometimes, the loudest victory comes from saying nothing at all.